If you have been a victim of a crime in the US, you're undocumented, and you have suffered either physical or mental harm because of that crime, watch this video because you may qualify for a U visa and be able to get legal status in the US. I am U.S. immigration attorney Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. The U visa is for victims of specific crimes that end up having either physical or mental harm due to that crime, and that victim of the crime helped law enforcement in their either investigation or in their prosecution of that crime. The only thing with U visas is not every single crime is going to qualify. So let's talk about the crimes that actually qualify you for a U visa. In order to qualify for a U visa, you have to meet certain requirements. The first one is you have to be a victim of a qualifying criminal activity. Secondly, you have to have suffered substantial physical or mental abuse as a result of being a victim of that criminal activity. 3, you must have information about the criminal activity. 4, you have to have been helpful, are being helpful, or will likely be helpful in the future to law enforcement as they investigate and prosecute the crime. And the crime must have happened in the United States or violated U.S. laws. And then the final requirement is that you have to be admissible to the U.S. Let's take these one at a time. The biggest thing here is having that qualifying criminal activity, because if you don't have it, none of the other stuff matter. So not every single crime is going to qualify under the U visa. So it's really important that as you're thinking about whether you qualify for a U visa or not, you are paying attention to the qualifying crime. One thing you will notice about all of these crimes is a crime against a person, not a thing, right? So it's a crime committed against you, the person. So for example, if you are home when someone breaks in and you are harmed, right? You may qualify for something under this. However, if you are not home when that happens, you would not qualify. So again, it's about the person, not the thing. So let's get into what these qualifying crimes are. Now let's go through what these qualifying crimes are. And it's going to go in alphabetical order. So let's go through them. Abduction, abusive sexual conduct, blackmail, domestic violence, extortion, false imprisonment, female genital mutilation, felonious assault, fraud in foreign labor contracting, hostage, incest, involuntary servitude, kidnapping, manslaughter, murder, obstruction of justice, peonage, perjury, prostitution, rape, sexual assault, sexual exploitation, slave trade, stalking, torture, trafficking, witness tampering, unlawful criminal restraint. And then finally, other related crimes. Now let's talk about other related crimes. So in some states, these laws, right, these crimes may not match the federal definition exactly, right? They may not use the word kidnapping as the name of that specific crime, but if it meets the same elements, right, if it has the same requirements as the federal definition of kidnapping, then it could fit into it, right? Felonious assault has multiple things that can fit into that. So it's not just, you are assaulted and beat up, right? It could be physical assault that is a felony. It could also be armed robbery. when the person is brandishing a weapon, makes threats while they're brandishing that weapon. So there's layers to it. The second thing you have to show after you show that you are a victim of a qualifying criminal activity, like I said, is to show the physical and mental abuse that you suffered. This can be with medical records for the physical abuse, right? To show the injuries that you sustained as a result of that crime. The mental abuse can also be medical records. If you have went to a therapist, if you have sought psychological evaluation, things like that. If you are on medication, if you have been diagnosed with like PTSD because of that crime, well, guess what? That qualifies as mental abuse. The next thing you want to show is that you have information about the crime. This is a unique requirement because you don't get to determine really if you have information about the crime. It's more of law enforcement that gets to determine if you have information about the crime. So for example, if you were hit in the back of the head and you passed out, you may think that you don't have information about the crime. However, law enforcement may have a completely different perspective than you. So you do not want to determine that for yourself, whether you have information about the crime or not. It's really about law enforcement, and what they determine is your ability to help. So do you have information about the criminal activity? Were you helpful? Are you being helpful? Will you be helpful in the future? This is all law enforcement questions, right? It's about the law enforcement agency saying that, yes, this person was helpful to us. This person is being helpful to us, or we have a feeling that this person will be helpful in the future because this investigation is ongoing and there's going to be prosecution and all these other things coming up in the future that we're going to need them to testify at. So that is all law enforcement basically reinforcing that information. And then the crime has to violate U.S. laws or be committed on U.S. soil. So again, that is all part of the law enforcement end of things. You are not making that determination, right? But you are able to see if the crime took place in the U.S. or not, right? That's really key here. Did the crime take place in the U.S. or not? If it did not take place in the U.S., if it was not committed by a U.S. person, if it was not in violation of U.S. laws, then you would now qualify for a U visa. The last requirement for a U visa is something I want to just take a minute on, is that you need to be admissible into the U.S. In order to get a non-immigrant visa, which a U visa is, you need to be admissible. So if you entered without inspection, if you don't have a passport, if you overstayed your visa, if you worked without a work permit, you are inadmissible. However, the U visa does give you the option of applying for a waiver for anything that makes you inadmissible, including the permanent bar. So if you have a permanent bar, you know that you are not able to get status through a family member in the U.S. You still have to leave the U.S., stay out of the U.S. for 10 years, and then be able to apply for a visa to the U.S. With the U visa, though, when you apply for the waiver, you can include the fact that you are permanently barred under that waiver. And if the waiver is approved, you are no longer restricted from getting the visa. So that's why they say being admissible is a requirement. However, there is a waiver that you can apply for the things that make you inadmissible. So let's talk about how to actually apply for the U visa. So now you know all the requirements. You kind of, wrap your head around what is required of me in order to apply for a U visa. Let's talk about what forms you actually need. The first step of a U visa is to get a U certification from the law enforcement agency. This can be the law enforcement agency that investigated the crime, prosecuted the crime, or in the case of domestic violence, may have issued a restraining order. This can be a judge that issued the restraining order. So it just depends on the particular situation of the crime and how things were reported and investigated and prosecuted, okay? So whoever in that chain that can do the certification, they would have to do the certification. In most police departments and DA's office, they have a specific person that handles the U visa certifications. In our office, we take care of this for our clients. We find out who the person is at that law enforcement agency. We send over a request for the certification, and they complete the certification for us and send it back to us. It is important to know that it's not just a letter that the law enforcement agency sends, it's an actual form that they have to fill out, basically saying what the crime was, how you were helpful, if you were helpful, and they have to sign it, okay? So it's really the key to a U visa application is that certification. Without it, you cannot go on and apply for a U visa. So that is done on Form I-918, Supplement B. So the law enforcement agency fills out the Supplement B. And then once you have that, you can fill out the U visa application, which is the I-918 petition for U non-immigrant status. And if you know already that you are inadmissible, because like I said, you overstayed a visa, you entered without inspection, you have a permanent bar, you worked without authorization, you don't have a passport, whatever the reasons are that make you inadmissible, you want to make sure that you are filing the waiver, and you file that waiver on Form I-192, and you want to include that with your application. And of course, you want to make sure that you include all your supporting documents, because that is what's going to really drive home the point that you need the U visa requirements, right? You want to show what the crime is. Typically, we would include like the statute from the state law that says what the crime is. You want to show your mental or physical abuse. You want to document that. You want to show that you were helpful to law enforcement. So if you have if you testified at the trial and you have the transcript from the trial to show that you did testify, you want to include things like that. Yes, you have the certification, but it doesn't hurt to include additional documentation to back up your helpfulness. Another thing that we like to include in my office with the U visa application is the work permit application. The U visa is a unique process because once you file for it, the USCIS will process your application and they can give you something called a bona fide determination, basically saying, we think there's enough here for us to be able to potentially approve your U visa application, but we're not able to do that right now because there's not a visa available currently. So we're going to give you this determination. And with this determination, you can apply for a work permit. If you do not include your work permit application with your U visa application, you must wait for that determination letter to come in and then you can apply for a work permit. However, if you include the work permit application with your U visa application, once USCIS issues that determination, they can now go ahead and process your work permit application that you already filed. So you are not waiting any additional amount of time for them to start processing your work permit. They can just go ahead and start processing it because you already filed it. It is so important that as you are going through this process, you are looking at all the options available to you. What can you do to basically help you move your process along? Now, let's talk about what happens after you file your U visa application. The first thing that happens is that you'll get a biometrics notice. With your biometrics notice, you'll go and get fingerprinted and have your picture taken. This is for background check purposes so that USCIS knows who you are and make sure you do not have any criminal issues that could lead them to make you inadmissible. So they want to make sure that you are who you say you are, and they have all the information possible to make sure that you are not a threat. Once you have your fingerprints done, your U visa application pack is ready and done, right? You don't have to do anything else but wait. The U visa process right now, from filing to getting an actual approval for your U visa, is taking about 15 years. Yes, you heard me right. 15 years. So it's really important that you get your application right the first time so that as you're waiting all those years, you are not going to then get a notice of intent to deny or a request for evidence later on down the line. You want to make sure you're including all those things up front so that you can just process your application and know that you are just waiting for a visa to be available. Right. In that process, as you're going, I mentioned before that you can get a bona fide determination. A bona fide determination can come in about a year and a half to 2 years after filing. That's what we're seeing right now. That may change with the new Trump administration, but for right now, we are still getting those determinations. So that is great for our clients because that means with that determination, you can actually get your work permit while you're within that 15 years for a visa to be available. So that is a great, great thing for clients. So that's something you can look forward to in the short term. Yes, I said 15 years, but in the short term, you can get that determination and you can get your work permit and then wait out for a visa to be available. Once a visa is available and your U visa is officially approved, you get that letter, you are good, you can keep renewing your work permit. And then 3 years after that, you can apply for a green card. Now, let me give you a little tip here. If you apply for a U visa, you put everything that makes you inadmissible, including your entry without inspection, and all of those things are waived, and you don't want to wait the 3 years before you can apply for a green card, and you have a child that's a U.S. citizen over 21 that wants to file for you, that couldn't do it before because you entering without inspection and they're not a qualifying relative for a waiver. Now with your U visa approved, which means your waiver is also approved, they can now, your child can now file for you and not have to worry about you entering without inspection because it was waived under the U visa. Now you go from waiting 3 years before you can even apply for a green card to your child immediately being able to apply for a green card for you after your U visa is approved. And then you don't have to wait any additional amount of time. They can just apply for a green card for you and you can have your green card before your 3 years wait is over. So that's just a little tip that you can use if you're already in the U visa process and you're thinking about, how the 3 years and, all of that. It's just a little tip. You don't have to use it, but if you are in a position where it can be helpful to you, you have it now. Let's talk about one of the great things about the U visa, which is you can include some family members depending on your age and their relationship to you. So if you are under the age of 21, you can include your spouse, your children, your parents, and your siblings that are under the age of 18, right? Your unmarried siblings under the age of 18. Again, this is if you, the petitioner, the person that's the victim of the crime, is under the age of 21. Then all these other people, your spouse, your parents, your siblings, under the age of 18, your children can also benefit from this. They don't have to be direct victims. They don't even have to be victims at all. They can still benefit because you are under the age of 21. Now, if you are over the age of 21, the only people that can benefit are your spouse and your children. It's really important to know this because then if you have a spouse or children that entered without inspection or overstayed a visa, they can be included under your application. You just need to file an additional form for them, which will be the I-918A. It will be the supplement A for them. Remember, the certification from the law enforcement is supplement B. Your spouse, your children, if you're under the age of 21, your parents, your siblings, they will come in under the supplement A. And you want to file that for them. And if they need a waiver, you need to make sure that you are also including a waiver for them. Okay? Because again, if they're applying for a U visa, 9 times out of 10, you're going to need a waiver. Although the U visa takes up to 15 years for a visa to be available, just know if you do not have any other options available to you, the U visa is a great tool that you can use to gain status in the US and not only gain status, but get your path to US citizenship, okay? It is not, even though it's a visa, it is not something like DACA where it's a temporary fix. A U visa can lead to a green card, can then lead to citizenship. So this is something that although it takes time to get there, it is such a great tool, especially for people out there that do not have any other option. If you are in a position where you want to see if the crime that was committed against you qualifies for a U visa, you want to start your U visa process, you don't know where to start, you don't know who to contact to get that certification, well, you don't have to. You can reach out to me in my office and we can schedule a strategy session where we can talk about it, see if I can help you, if we are a good fit, and what the next steps will be to get you on your journey for your U visa. If you would like to schedule that strategy session, please go ahead and go to my website, lilylegal.com, click on Contact Us, and select a date and time that works best for you. You can also call my office at 508-443-1788